something that we should try to emulate or avoid in telling the second chapter of the story?
I don't understand. Your voice is incredibly clear.
The question is,
I don't understand what you said.
when you were looking to do the sequel, were there certain sequels that of other films that you kind of wanted to avoid some of the pitfalls they fell into with sequels, or others that you looked at as kind of really great examples?
I remember. So the only one. Did you ever see a film called Gregory's Girl?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a wonderful film called Gregory's Girl. They made a 20 years later sequel called Gregory's Girl 2.
And you moved on to women by then?
and when we were auditioning for this, we were auditioning for the solicitor at the beginning, you know, the guy who baked the assaults at the beginning. And we saw John Gordon Sinclair, who's obviously the lead in Gregory's Girl. And he came in to audition for the part. And I said, "Oh, you've done this before. Have you got any advice?" And he said, "Just make sure it's exactly the fucking same, okay?" That was all he said, because they'd had a real, like, Bill Forsyth had been determined to make something very, very different, and it hadn't worked and stuff like that. So that was a one we bumped into. No, there are some amazing sequels, and obviously you dream that you might get into that. You get that category of sequel that where it feels like you can stand beside the first film. We did have a thing about the title, because originally we weren't going to call it. I was determined not to call it Trainspotting 2 or anything like that, because I wanted it to find its own feet first. Whereas if everybody's saying, "Oh, we're doing a sequel," then everybody defaults to sequel behaviour. You know, like marketing, everybody, the PR, everybody, the studio. And so we called it, and it's a terrible title, and I knew it was a terrible title. We called it for a long time The Least Unfamiliar.
It's a real crappy John Hodge title, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
a lifeless ordinary.
And you should have seen the studio's face when we told them we were going to call it The Least Unfamiliar, and they said, "And no reference to Trainspotting," and I said, no reference to Trainspotting. Anyway, they were in despair. But it was important, because it allowed us to actually to work the film up without feeling that it automatically was a sequel. And it seems perverse and silly, but it was important to it. And eventually they said, okay, come clean, what are you really going to call it? And we said, well, okay, we're going to call it what the characters would call it. Because if they knew they were in a sequel, what would they call it? And of course their favourite sequel would be the James Cameron movie, Terminator 2. So we're going to call it T2. Because as
some extra sales on Amazon, just people Googling it.
Absolutely. But also because the characters, because of who they are, they would want to pay respects to one of the greatest directors in the world, and at the same time piss him off.
Because the book that was called Porno, Andrew MacDonald had said to me, "Oh, we can't really use porno as a title." I said, "You don't have to sell me on that one," because I'd done a film on one of my books called Filth, and we called it. We got a lot of money from Germany. One of the biggest sales agents was in Germany, and they put a lot of money up front for us. And we called it Drecksau, which was the name of the book in Germany, which literally translated as filthy cunt. Nobody was going to go into a cinema. It completely bombed in Germany. I mean, the film did well. It did really well in the UK. It did well in most territories. Completely bombed in Germany, because nobody's going to go up and walk under a date movie with kind of hand in hand with somebody with filthy cunt. You know. So
a film by Pixar.
So I was kind of. I wasn't kind of married to the idea of it being called porno as a movie.
Well, I think that the one sequel title in the movies, notwithstanding, that drove me crazy was there was this horror movie about 20 years ago called I Know What You Did Last Summer. And then the sequel came out a couple years later and goes, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. It was like, no, you know what they did 3 summers ago. All right, we have just time for one more question. I'm going to go right here. Yeah, go ahead.
Previously, the other sequel that you worked on was 28 Weeks Later, where you were executive producer. Were there different challenges you had to face as an executive producer versus being a director on this movie?
Yeah, I'm a terrible executive producer. I kind of, and I apologise to those people whom I executive produce for, because I have this terrible tendency to think, no, you should do it like this, which is not what you do. You should do what Irvine does about, you give support to people and let them get on with the job themselves. So I did that, and I wasn't a very good executive producer for Juan Carlos Fresnadillo, who directed it. Who's a lovely, lovely man and a wonderful director. So I can't recommend myself as an executive producer to any of you. So.
Listen, I want to thank everybody for coming out. Special thanks to Irvine Welsh and Danny Boyle, ladies and gentlemen. And thanks, guys, for sticking around. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Brian, too. March 24th, it opens. Tell your friends and tell your friends and tell their friends.